Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Because You Asked. Today we have President and CEO of ServingIntel with us. One of our partners recently asked, how can we reduce food costs? And Lance, I know you have several ideas for this, and I think we're going to touch on 5 of those today. And there's also a white paper that we will be distributing in the next 24 hours or so. So with that in mind, I will turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, David. Food cost or inventory is a interesting thing in the restaurant world. When I began my career back in the 80s and then through mid 90s, I worked for TW Services, Ruby Tuesdays, Outback Steakhouse. We did inventory on a regular cadence. And it was pretty simple. If we didn't do inventory as a management team, we got fired, and therefore inventory got done on a regular basis. I'd mentioned in previous interviews that at Ruby Tuesdays, I learned how not to run a restaurant, but they were highly proficient at counting the pennies and inventory percentages to the 100th of a percent, where at Outback Steakhouse, it was more of a high level. Ruby Tuesdays, it was 28% food cost. At Outback Steakhouse, it was 42% food cost. We did inventory every single Sunday night at Ruby Tuesdays. At Outback Steakhouse, we did a mid-month and then a complete end of month. But every night we did a steak count of all of the different types of steak in the restaurant to make sure that nobody was stealing any of the high dollar stuff. So there's a little bit of background, but every restaurant on the planet should be doing inventory. And there's a number of reasons why that's the case. And we're going to go through those reasons today. And so I've picked out the 5 biggies here. We're going to drill in each one of these pretty quickly. So one is just simply managing it, having an understanding of what it is and how to do it. There's 3 different types of inventory in restaurants. 2 are prevalent. We'll talk about the one that we recommend. There's menu evaluations, or what I call, there's a chart called a velocity chart, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Portion control, got some great stories on that one, and then we'll wrap it all up with staff knowledge. So let's drill into the first one. Food cost management. Software is everywhere. With the solution we provide, it comes with an inventory module. There are third-party software programs out there from $500 to $2,000 that can be procured that are fairly feature rich, and the vast majority of them tie into the point of sale data. And then finally, if you're working with the food house, Gordon, Cisco, US Foods, Performance Food Group, they all have built into their online software inventory. And so you can utilize any of those solutions. Solutions are everywhere, but the point is pick one and start with one. My recommendation, don't start with spreadsheets, because you end up creating a software program where the software programs already exist. So 1, pick your tool. Second, make it a part of your weekly routine. Here's an interesting thing that happens every Sunday night. Usually it's Monday morning. With a clipboard and a pencil in hand, your chef and or kitchen manager will go throughout your kitchen, literally taking a physical count. And they're looking and they're saying, I got this much ground beef. I need to order this much more today, but they're not documenting, today we have 30 pounds of ground beef. I need to order 2 cases, another 80. Not doing that. And so that 30 pounds of stock on hand is what's incredibly important, because that's how you compare to how many hamburgers did you sell last week and what's your loss ratio. How much meat did you actually use compared to how much meat you sold? And is there a variance in that particular one? There's almost always a variance for most all items, but you need to know, is it a 1% variance or a loss, or is that a 50% loss because somebody's stealing a hamburger from you? And so getting a system in place is huge. What I'm talking about there is hypothetical food cost compared to actual food cost. So let's stay with the hamburger example. Your point of sale system should be able to very easily show you how many hamburgers you sold last week. And let's say our hypothetical bar and grill serves an 8-ounce patty. And so all the hamburgers should be categorized in a sales category, depending on how many different types you sell. And for a period of time, last 7 days, you sold 200 hamburgers, or 100 pounds, each one's 8 ounces, 100 pounds of ground beef. Well, that 30-pound number that I had mentioned a minute ago, that's our ending count. You go back 7 days and you had an ending count there. And so the inventory equation is incredibly simple. It's your beginning inventory plus what you purchased minus what you sold should equal your ending inventory. That's the equation. And so if you're tracking at the beginning, we had 30 pounds. We bought 100 pounds, which is 200 patties. We sold 200 patties. We have 30. That's perfect. Your hypothetical, what you should have ran, it matches your actual. You have no loss, and you live in a perfect world. Quick story back to Ruby Tuesdays, we were doing steak counts. We only had sirloins and New York strips at that time. We were counting sirloins and strips, and all the staff knew it. Well, we had a busboy who was stealing 20-pound chubs, or they're 10-pound chubs of 80-20 ground beef mix. He was stealing the chubs. He was literally taking them out on a trash run, putting them into his car. A security guard caught him, came back and saw him, came back and told us, and we caught him then. And your employees know what you're counting. Your employees know what you're not counting. But again, if you're not doing inventory, you're not going to notice these types of variances. And so a complete physical inventory must be used, must be documented and put into the software on a regular cadence in order for you to know what your actual variance percentage is. And we're not, weekly is a little extreme. Once a month, sweet spot. It really depends on your operation and the volume of your operation. But just simply know every Monday morning, somebody's placing orders for your operation. That is the time when you should be documenting the physical count, because that's really all that's required. What do I have on hand? Put it into the software, run the numbers, and you will be alerted to things that are missing versus things that aren't missing. So next is inventory methods. This is pretty straightforward. There's 3. There's LIFO, which is last in, first out. It's typically used in the manufacturing industry where commodity prices are trending either up or down. You have average cost, which some restaurants will use average costing, but the one that's most recommended is FIFO, first in, first out. And that's, think about stock rotation. If you got 2 cartons of heavy cream, one's got an expiration date, the other's got an expiration date, you should be using the first in, the older, first. And so that should be the way that your inventory is set up in the system, the way you should be rotating stock. And there's another metric that's very important. It's called inventory turn. And it's basically, it's real simple. When you do an inventory, you end up with the total value of inventory on hand. And let's just say it's $2,000. All your meat, seafood, and produce on a Monday morning, which you should be nearly empty. You got about $2,000 worth of produce on hand. If that's a regular number, then you take that by your purchases and how many purchases do you have? If you bought $2,000 and that's what you used in a month, your inventory turn ratio is simply 1. Well, a restaurant should be turning its inventory significantly. 2 times a week is like fantastic, because there's some items you buy that'll last you more than a week. And so when you look at the total value of that, your inventory turns are how well you're managing your inventory. And it's also tied directly to cash flow, because your restaurant is not the warehouse. Your sales food rep will want you to be the warehouse. They're going to want to move everything from where they warehouse it into your restaurant. But you pay that warehouse. The service they provide is keeping you with fresh stock and just enough to take care of your business for the days that you're open. So that inventory turn is a big, important number to look at on a monthly basis. It should be one of the KPIs you look at that's tied to your profit and loss statements. So FIFO is the way to go regarding the way you set up your inventory software. Now, a velocity chart, and this is a 4-quad chart that's often referred to stars, dogs, plow horses, and puzzles. This is a very simple thing to understand, but you need to know 2 things. 1, how much of an item am I selling? And this analysis is usually done by menu category. So let's take a menu category. Let's do appetizers. So if you look in your sales reports from your point of sale system for the last 7 days, you'll have your number one selling appetizer and your lowest selling appetizer. That is the left-hand side, or the y-axis of your grid, is velocity. How many are you selling during the giving period? And then you have the X, which is your profit or gross margin per item sold. So if you get a big sampler platter and you're selling it for $9.95 and it's $4 on the plate, you could look at it and go, oh, 40% food costs, that's high. Percentages do not pay bills. Margins pay bills. And so if you're making almost $6 on an appetizer platter, but you've got fried cheese sticks that you sell for $5.95 and they cost you $1, well, you can see you're only making $5 on one, you're making $6 on the other. So the more items you could sell that bring in more margin dollars per item is what you want. So the things that we sell, the things that are profitable. So the high sale items that are very profitable are called stars. That's obvious. They're the things you want to sell more of. Very popular, very profitable. On the opposite side of that, very low sales volume, very low margin per sale. Those are your dogs. There's only one thing to do with a dog. If you get a dog that's running a month long, and you will, is to get it off your menu. It's not popular and you're making no money. What's the point? On the top part of this, where we have high sales items, but they're lower on their margin, what do you do there? You raise the price a buck. It's easy. People will still order it, but you start to slide that puzzle over, right? Excuse me, that plow horse, you start to put over towards profits. Then on the bottom right-hand side of the graph, where you've got your items that are very profitable, but you're not selling enough of them, those are your puzzles. How do you sell more is the puzzle. Do you have a server and bartender contest? You're actually pushing them. Do you do table tents? Do you do point of sale material in your restaurant? How can you get those sales up? Because they're highly profitable and you want to keep them there. And so this type of analysis should be done. Our recommendation is once a month across all of your menu categories. And that way you're able to keep your menu fresh, keep new ideas flowing in, and really have a good understanding. What is your average sale and average profit or contribution margin per item per sales category? And your goal as the owner operator is to get those numbers up to the right-hand side. So that's how you do analysis by sales category in order to be more profitable. Portion control. I helped a good friend of mine who owned 3 pizza restaurants in Missouri implement an inventory system. And again, pizza restaurant, their number one cost item, I hope you can guess this, of course, it was cheese. And we started going through and putting the recipes into the software. That's how this all works, is you put your recipes in, recipes are tied to ingredients, and items are tied to what you sold. That's how the software comes together. And so over the course of time, by selling X number of pizzas, again, you should have a hypothetical amount of cheese that you used. Well, we started putting in the numbers and started running the reports for them, and we found out over portioning cheese at a significant amount. And in fact, for his 3 restaurants, when we added up how much cheese was being lost, it was $100,000 a year that this very smart operator had no idea was vanishing. Well, he'd implemented a security camera system. He started watching the tape, and what was happening when he worked a shift, he was typically a day operator. He had night managers, he's a day operator. As soon as he left, the chefs on the lines making the pizzas stopped using the cups to put the cheese on and started using the magical hands. So the amount of cheese per pie went up dramatically because kitchen help can be lazy. They didn't want the extra step of using the measuring cup. And he was able to rectify that situation. And again, the bottom line impact was $100,000 a year across 3 restaurants. Heck, if it had just been 1 restaurant, it was $33,000 a year. These are the types of things that we see that's happening. One thing I'll give Ruby Tuesdays credit for is they had an axiom that was repeated often. It was, there is no quality without consistency. And so if you've got a dish where there's 3 ounces of shredded cheddar cheese on that dish, it should be 3 ounces on Friday night. the same as it is Monday at lunch. Always the same product, always the same portions. That's what your customers are expecting. And, you know, kind of like the bartender example, if you get your favorite bartender, because they give you a 3-ounce pour instead of an 1.5 ounce pour, bartender's getting more tips, but they're ripping off the house. And you have to have consistency. So portion control is huge in all parts of the kitchen. And some of the things to watch out for, you know, serving plates. You should actually be seeing plates coming back. A lot of restaurants we work with, their portion sizes are simply too much, and people can't eat all of it. And if you've got portion parts coming back, that's possibly an issue. Quality could also be an issue. So you want to certainly be watching what's coming back to the dish area and what portion size might be too much. Next, we've got staff knowledge. There's a system that we recommend that restaurants consider implementing called the Great Game, and it's about teaching all staff to understand the numbers. And we're talking about income statement, cash flows, balance sheets. We're talking about everything. And in fact, Outback Steakhouse was a Great Game practitioner, or they had implemented the Great Game back in 1986 when that company was founded. And so teaching your staff the numbers, bringing in the reports, they'll get an understanding of how important little things are. Silverware, not hitting the trash can, creamers. You know, you get an unopened creamer, hasn't been touched, not hitting the trash can. Huge amounts of money hit the trash can in a restaurant every single day. But if your staff isn't educated, and we would argue provide an incentive to be maximizing and reducing costs within a restaurant, without that awareness, they're just going to do what they do and just not going to be really attached or attuned with what the restaurant's doing, and a lot of product will end up being tossed. So we recommend keep staff in the loop. Commodity prices, avocados. Before avocados this year was tomatoes. There's always some flood or some drought somewhere on the planet that's causing some commodity price to jump up and down. You should be aware of these trends and in making menu adjustments as needed. But across the board, staff need to be better educated and connected with that, how these things affect the bottom line. And then again, yeah, our recommendation is put together a bonus plan, some type of incentive, and give your staff a reason to care on how well that the restaurant's performing. So takeaways. Number one cost in a business. Everybody knows it, and so few people pay attention to it. It's food cost. Percentages are interesting. Everybody compares percentages. Margins are everything. Margins pay the bills. If you use these 5 ways on how to reduce food costs, you'll make it a dramatic improvement on your bottom line. More importantly, your cash flow. And that's essentially the wrap. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can send your emails to solutions@servingintel.com. You can reach out to me directly at L for Lance, lbell@servingintel.com. And we're excited to have the opportunity to share this information with you. David, thanks for putting this together.